Somewhere between a life well lived and a life forgotten stirs the question, were we there for those who needed us?
We all come to this life with something, some disability, some weakness.
When you're confronted personally with a mental health challenge in your family or yourself, there's initially a sense of hopelessness, maybe frustration, questioning.
I grew up with my half-brother, Hassie, who had been lobotomized in the early 50s.
As a 16-year-old, I felt alone. I felt betrayed. And I felt broken.
25 years ago, I believe we were all focused on illness. Now we are focused on recovery. We know that people can heal from mental health issues.
What I imagine, and I think what we all need to imagine, is a world wherein we don't actually make these distinctions.
It's about helping people meet their dreams and goals.
Before the name Mental Health Center of Denver was indelibly etched into this city's consciousness, the past needed to be redefined.
Well, back in the 1980s, when I was first elected mayor, we had a very dysfunctional mental health system. There were different organizations in different parts of the city. People were falling through the cracks. We found a way to encourage all the organizations to come under one umbrella that made all the services more efficient. They started raising money, but more importantly, the quality of the services improved. And that's the bottom line, to provide better services to the people who need them.
It started when I was 12. It started out by grabbing at me, and then it got to where he would crawl into my bed. And no, you didn't talk about that. Who would have believed me?
It's the faces that we see every day. I remember coming downstairs from my office, and there was a young woman about 18 years old standing at the front door of the administration building, her eyes wide and scared, holding her 2-day-old baby, having just been released from the hospital with no place to go.
We have a brother who had a severe mental health crisis in his life, and it was a clarion call to action for all of us that this issue is now personal. He's doing very well, but it wasn't because it was by accident. We reached out for resources. As time goes forward and you are supporting the person and seeing them improve, certainly light bulbs go off. It signals that you can get better from these conditions, that treatment works.
In the old days, or then, we barely even thought about what were the impacts of how a person was coping on how they were actually managing any one of their physical illnesses, or even were in the space to prevent physical illness. When we think about holistic care, includes paying attention to not just the body, but also the mind and the spirit.
I think of a woman that was homeless for 13, 14 years on the streets of Denver, started taking our computer training program. Eventually, through our computer skills, she got a job with an insurance company, went into full-time employment, got married, got her own housing, got reunited with her daughter. So, you know, there's a lot of good stories.
It's about helping people meet their dreams and goals. They can't do that as effectively if they're sick. Sick physically, sick mentally, or in any other way. And so the business community pragmatically has to recognize, and I think it does, that those values are really, really important. That's why today we see companies evaluated as the best place to work.
Warren Village is a sustainable housing program along with a learning center where we work with low-income single-parent families. And so we give them stable housing and an option for early childhood education for their children while they are either going to school or working.
Well, the partnership between the Mental Health Center of Denver and Warren Village Learning Center is very special because it's kind of a unique context. And one of the places we're going as a team and as the Mental Health Center of Denver is making consultation sustainable, because it's a really valuable part of supporting children's emotional lives.
The Mental Health Center of Denver has had an incredible impact on the lives of persons with mental illness in the city and county of Denver. They have focused on best practice models. They have sought out the most innovative and unique ways of providing services. They never rest on what they've done. They're always looking for ways to do it better.
So we're building a new site for children and family. Within this site, there's going to be like a gardening center. We're going to also provide, the outpatient setting, the day treatment center. But it's going to encompass, children, families, older adults. It's going to have a huge impact within the community.
It will become a center that everybody wants to use, that there is no stigma there. That is a place where people can have joy and happiness and learn. It's a place where kids can feel very comfortable.
My hopes for the future is that we offer opportunities to everybody. It's an ideal time for us to accept people in, make this change, and prove to the rest of the world that everyone has their place and they can be contributing in their own way.
MHCD got me off the street and gave me a new life. Probably saved my life.
I'll never forget when my son was 17 years old, and because of his intellectual disability, he said to me, "Dad, I don't have many friends." He said, "and most of my classmates call me retard." And he started to cry, and I had to have a very serious conversation with him, because back then he was coded, he was labeled retarded. Things have changed, and through the support of programs such as the Mental Health Center of Denver, in particular the 2 Succeed program, that will continue to change.
I'm most proud of my tenacity. And recovery for me today is continuing to heal all the layers of trauma. They taught me that mental illness, mental health issues were my brain and not my morality. If it wasn't for the Mental Health Center of Denver coming into my life almost 15 years ago, I know it sounds really cliche. If I wasn't dead, I would be a shriveled up shell of a human being.
Sometimes I think if only the Mental Health Center of Denver had existed when my brother needed it most.
There used to be a movie out that was called Waiting for Superman. And the unfortunate challenge with Waiting for Superman is that it's a fictional character that never shows up. And the reality is that communities are made great when people step up and recognize, I am the Superman or Superwoman. If this community is to be great, if we are to successfully navigate the challenges that face us, it rests on our shoulders. The reality is that leadership comes from within, and we have to recognize that it's us we're waiting for.
When I think about creating this and the partners I had, but particularly what I learned from the patients, I see this as sacred work, and it is such a privilege to have been part of the creation of this integrated system.